serving elementary school. Also, as I was getting ready, I got bloody foundation on my top. So if you see that, just ignore it, okay? Thank you so much. Thank you. It's one of those mornings, unfortunately, I think. Alright. Get it together, get it together, get it together. Hi guys, it's Leah and welcome to my August reading recap video. So, August was actually, surprisingly, my most productive reading month this year. So far, at least. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 books. Hooray! And most of these books were very good and some of them definitely surprised me. Some of the books I thought were going to be really good this month ended up not being so good as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but overall very positive, very high ratings. I mean, I typically give very high ratings, but August was a really excellent reading month. So I started this month off by reading Sick Boys by Clarissa Wilde. I finished this while I was in Portugal and I was actually sick at the time I was reading this. I ended up giving this book a 4 stars. I found it really enjoyable. I thought it was very sexy. This is definitely a super spicy book, and you should also certainly check trigger warnings if you have triggers. That sort of thing doesn't bother me, but yeah, it was definitely a very intense book. Sick Boys is a reverse harem bully romance, so that tells you a lot of what you really need to know right from the jump. This book didn't give me like a 5-star feeling, and like one of my main criticisms of it, I guess, was like, so our main character, she's like trying to I guess get revenge on the people who bullied her sister. It is so funny. Our main character will run around being like, you're a bully, and then she'll literally kill someone. And you're like, murder? Bullying? Which is worse? Interesting. Yeah, so I just thought it was funny. But it was a really, really good time. I'll probably continue the series eventually, but like it's not on my must finish book. I definitely did really like it though, and I'm glad I read it. The next book I read was Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is the second Shepherd King book, and I gave this one a 4.5 stars. I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than the first one. I did really like the first one, but it wasn't like this revolutionary, mind-blowing thing that I had seen so many people say it was online. But I liked where it left off in the first one. So I jumped into Two Twisted Crowns very optimistic, and it definitely didn't let me down. Let me shut this fucking window. Doesn't matter how hot I am, every car in Lincolnshire apparently wants to drive past my window right now. Two Twisted Crowns was really good. I read it very quickly. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I gave it a 4.5, but again, it just didn't like give me that 5-star feeling where it's like, oh my god, I need to reread this book every year, But I think a lot of people would really, really enjoy it. For me, again, it was just like the magic system wasn't my favorite thing in the entire world, though I did think it was really unique and interesting. I think it would be a really good fantasy book for people who are just getting into fantasy and they want to try something. It's very digestible, it's quite easy, and I wouldn't say it's high fantasy, so I think a lot of people could enjoy it if they're first-time fantasy readers. The third book I read was actually highly anticipated and I had very, very high hopes, and it was Dragon Rider by Taran Mataru. It's got dragons, it's called Dragon Rider. I thought the synopsis sounded super duper interesting, really intriguing. I was extremely, extremely excited for this book. And I ended up giving it a 3.5 stars. It was just marketed wrong, I think. This was Taran Mataru's first adult fantasy book. It just didn't read adult, and I kind of felt gypped in that sense. Like, this reads extremely young adult. I think at a push it is new adult. The only reason it, I guess, falls into the adult category is some of the themes mentioned, but like, I've said this before, but like mentioning prostitution to me does not make it an adult book. I think it is new adult at an absolute push, but just if you want to read this, keep in mind it absolutely reads like young adult. You can see that that's where Taran has that realm he's written in before. Also, the synopsis was just completely inaccurate to what the story actually was, and I don't understand why it's called Dragon Rider when the main character in question never rides a dragon. Spoiler alert. Also, the magic system was very unique. I liked that, and it had very hard limits, which I also liked. Of course, our character was like OP far faster than he should have been, but that's to be expected in, I guess, a fantasy novel. However, I just didn't find it that compelling. It really wasn't my favorite thing in the world. But the dragon in this book, Winter, is super, super cute. So I did really love her. This had a lot of potential. Unfortunately, it just really was not what I was expecting. But the last half of this book I read very quickly. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it was just a letdown. So I gave this one a 3.5. I'm sure there are lots of people who would really like this though. And then as a palette cleanser, I read Darling in the Franxx volumes 3 and 4 by Code 000 with the art by Kentaro Yabuki. If you guys are not new to my channel, you would know that Darling in the Franxx is one of my favorite animes of all time, which is definitely a controversial opinion, but I absolutely love it. And I've been wanting to read the manga for a very long time, but I've just never seen it anywhere until I came to the UK. So I read volumes 1 and 2, and then I was going to order 3 and 4 when I got back to Australia. I was going to order it online. But then I was in Forbidden Planet and it was right there, and I'd never seen it in stores before, so I couldn't say no. So I picked this up and I absolutely love it. It is still following the plot from the anime. I know at some point it diverges, but I really love this one. This one also included the beach episode, which is one of my favorite episodes and really where I think my favorite parts of the story start to kick off. Mitsuru and Kokoro and their story from the anime is actually one of my favorites. I know a lot of people probably didn't care for it just because of the age of the characters, but I absolutely loved it. I just thought their story was like proof of humanity, I suppose, and I really hope they don't change that aspect because I just love Kokoro and Mitsuru. Mitsuru and Kokoro are my favorite characters other than 02 and Hiro, of course. Of course, there's tons of gratuitous like nudity in this. It's just to be expected. It comes wrapped in plastic wrap so that you don't see the pornography in stores essentially, but it's not that hardcore. It's just like the anime was already very gratuitous, but in the manga you just get like my hand is covering Ichigo's boobs. It's just a lot of boob shots, you know? Also, when I first opened the cover, I was actually trying to film it for a vlog and I opened it up and the first shot is a full color art piece of Ichigo super naked and I was like, oh. But anyway, the art in here is really good. It's definitely a slightly different art style to the anime, just a little, not a lot, but it is really beautifully done. So yeah, this was of course a 5-star for me. It's my favorite ever. Then after I read that, I went into Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, and this was where my reading month really picked up. I at this point wasn't sure I was going to make it through my full TBR for the month, but Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent really turned something around for me. That book was a 5-star. It was amazing. You'll hear more about it in my reading vlog that will eventually come out where I read this book, but oh my god, Rain is just one of my favorite male main characters ever. I love Oriya. I think she's like strong but in a more realistic way and in a not annoying way like a lot of FMCs and fantasy books can be. I thought the political intrigue, the fighting, the romance was all really excellently done. I just had the perfect time from start to finish in this book. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Carissa's writing is so descriptive and lyrical in the sense that like even if you're reading a battle scene, it is like almost poetic to read, and I really enjoyed that. I just think she's absolutely excellent, and she shot right up into my list of new authors I've started reading this year who I absolutely love. She's in the Star-Cursed King was just like an easy 5-star for me. You guys have to pick up the Crowns of Nyaxia series, especially the duology of Serpent and the Wings of the Night and Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. Oh my god, just so good. I had to read more of Carissa as soon as I finished this book. So I went right into Six Scorched Roses, which is the novella in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. Technically it's 1.5, but I would actually recommend reading it after 2, because the events of 1.5, while they're between the first and second book, I think it sort of spoils one political element. It spoils something about the true nature of one of the characters, so I'd recommend reading Six Scorched Roses after Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, the way I did, because you're familiar with the characters then, it doesn't spoil anything, and you really just get to enjoy the novella. Oh my god, I loved Six Scorched Roses. I tore through that. It was amazing. I just thought it was literally the perfect novella. It was perfectly paced. Oh my god, please, please, please read Crowns of Nyaxia. It is like now one of my favorites ever. I literally almost want to reread Six Scorched Roses. It was so good. A 5-star, obviously. Just the perfect novella. I've never read anything quite like that. I just thought it was like sexy, romantic, and again like full of intrigue. So just amazing. Carissa has like this insane talent I can't even comprehend. Then I finally read something I've been wanting to read for ages, which was Captive Prince by C.S. Packet. Now this is a bit of an interesting read. It is LGBTQ. Our main pairing is 2 male characters, and it's set in like this historical fantasy where I think the 2 main kingdoms are supposed to be sort of allegories in a way for ancient Greece and possibly the Roman Empire. I'm not 100% sure, but that's sort of the vibes I get. One of our characters, Damien, is the son of the king of like the Greeks, I'll just call them, because I don't remember the fantasy lands names right now. We'll say he's like the son and the heir of the Greek Empire. One day, his father is killed, he is taken as a slave, and his household staff is like massacred. And his older brother, who is a bastard and technically shouldn't have been first in line for the throne, ends up becoming the king. And Damien is taken as a slave for the Roman Empire. When he gets there, he is the slave of the prince, the soon-to-be, when he comes of age, king of that empire. So Laurent, the future king of the Romans. His older brother, who was originally in line, was killed on the battlefield by Damon. I think I was calling him Damien, but I'm pretty sure it's Damon. By Damon. Damon becomes Laurent's slave, but Laurent doesn't realize that his slave called Damon is actually the prince Damon. Okay? And the way being a body slave works in the Roman society is that having a body slave is only appropriate when they are the same sex as you, because there's no chance of pregnancy. So all the body slaves in their empire are gay. Now Damon is bisexual. Laurent, he's very interesting. It's an extremely interesting political story, and where I'm at, nothing has happened. Nothing has progressed between our 2 characters, but my friend who recommended this to me assures me it happens in the second book. She can't believe I haven't read the second book yet. She was like, how could you stop reading it before it's escalated? But I assured her it is a priority for me to get to that second book soon. Captive Prince, super unique read. Definitely check the trigger warnings. I know this might not be for everybody. I don't think it's like a super triggering story, but just take a look before you consider picking this up, because it might not be for you. But I loved it. I gave it a 4.5. I thought it was fantastic. I definitely can see the next book being a 5-star read once it just, you know, once the relationship's consummated. I think it could definitely become a 5-star. I thought it was really good, really different. I haven't really read anything like that. I thought it was fantastic. So definitely check out The Captive Prince. Then I finished A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire saga. Of course, I've watched the show and I'm obsessed with House of the Dragon. I decided it's finally time to pick up the books. So I finished A Game of Thrones, easy 5-star. George Martin's writing is like very digestible, and Gott has everything I could want. I love political intrigue, in case I haven't made that fucking obvious throughout this video. I love it. He is an absolute god at it. I love high fantasy. I love his setting. I love his characters. Just the way he writes is so digestible. This book is like, anyone could read these books. Obviously, like, it's a bit more graphic than the show, and also the characters are a lot younger, so you have to keep in mind you'll be reading about them, all the characters doing a lot of things that are not very age appropriate. So like, for example, Daenerys is really 13 when she's with Khal Drogo. So you're going to be reading about that, so just enjoy that. Enjoy that for what it is. Bit orkies, of course, but you know, fiction. One thing I will say is that Bran is still an annoying, shit-stain worst character in the absolute world in the books, as well as he is in the series. I was honestly tempted to skip every time Bran was in the book. I wanted to skip his chapters. Oh no, I left over my water. Yeah, I wanted to skip every Bran chapter, but I pushed through. It's just because Bran is an annoying sack of shit. And my least favourite character by far, and he should have died when Jaime pushed him out the window. But anyway, that's just a personal thing. 5 stars. Alright, and then my friend encouraged me to start the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey, and I wasn't sure because that sounds like a stupid name, and also the covers very much give like graphic design is my passion, and I just wasn't sure. I thought this was going to be like ultra smut fest, and I wasn't sure I was prepared, but I picked up the first one, which is called The Risk, and I really, really enjoyed it. I almost finished the entire Mindfuck series in August. I only have the last book to go, which I'm now reading in September, but starting with The Risk, super, super good. It actually really surprised me. It's not that smutty. Like, it's spicy for sure, but it's not the main point of the story. The main focus of the story is really on the fact that our female main character is a serial killer. The story behind it, the reasoning why, I don't want to spoil you. I just want to say I really think you should read the Mindfuck series. Just put aside the covers. Just kind of put on blinders to that. It's a product of its time. It's very much giving Wattpad in the early 2010s. But just put that aside. Put aside also the circumstances of the author's death. Okay? Just definitely contextualizes why her pen name for this book was called Stabby. So the author's death is giving bad vibes, probably shouldn't pick up the series. However, put that aside, just don't Google it. Don't Google how did St. Abbey die. Don't read the Reddit. She's alive, guys. She's alive in the words of these books, and you should definitely read the Mindfuck series. It is just so good. Really, really good. So The Risk, I gave 4 stars. I'm waxing lyrical about it and only giving 4 stars, but it's about the whole package. Continuing on, after The Risk, I took a little detour because I went to Morocco and I didn't have the rest of the Mindfuck series on my Kindle. So I then read the first Frat Wars book, which I think is called King of Thieves by Saxon James. I read this because I saw Books Ever After did like a little spiel about it on their story, because I think it was new to their store, and I was like, that sounds really cool. I saw it was on KU, so I downloaded it. Again, this is I know they call like female and female relationships sapphic, but like, what do they call males? I want to say like boys love, but that is like very specific to like anime and manhwa. Anyway, so basically our 2 main characters are guys and they fall in love. One of them is vice president of a fraternity that is like the jock fraternity, basically. And our other character, he is a transfer student and his family is very rich, and they paid basically to get him a place in the fraternity that is like like the rich boy fraternity that's focused on academics. And they have obviously a rivalry, and one of the main games in their rivalry is called King of Thieves, and different items in each of the frat houses have like scores assigned to them, and they have to try and steal things without realizing, and whoever has the highest score at the end wins. There's this big party to the start at like the jock frat house, and our VP guy literally bumps into the new transfer student, and he was like, he's bisexual and the new guy is gay, and he's like, oop, that's a hot guy, I would like to sleep with him. So they go up to his room, and then one thing leads to another. They don't do it because they find out they're in rival frats, and the new guy wants to make a good impression on his frat. He doesn't want to screw everything up, and this guy's like, what if we just did it anyway? And he's like, no, we can't. And it goes from there. It's basically like forbidden love in a way because they're in rival fraternities. But this was just like a very fun read. I read it in one sitting when I was on my flight to Morocco. I had a really great time. Probably took me like 2 hours to read, 2.5 hours. It's like a pretty short digestible book, and it was just like really a lot of fun. I liked it. It was not dark, it was good. I just had a great time. So I ended up giving King of Thieves 5 stars. I just thought it was really good, and if you want like a romance book that is just not so high stakes, I would definitely check it out. It was really fun. Then I've had on my Kindle for ages because I got it back when I had Prime Reading, when I was using Prime Reading and I didn't have KU yet. So I had this waiting on my Kindle for months. Court of Shadows by C.N. Crawford. This is a fantasy book, fantasy romance. It is quite short and part of a series. I was very surprised by this. I really, really liked it. So it's an urban fantasy. Urban fantasy for me can be a bit of a hit or miss, but I really like this one. It's in like a dystopian fantasy version of London, and basically there's been some big dystopian apocalyptic sort of war thing, and humans remain in our world as it is. Nothing has sort of moved on from the tech we have now, and the different fantasy races have basically been banished to different worlds. And our female main character, she is half fae. We don't know what she's mixed with, but she's half fae. There is another group of fae who do remain in this world, living in the Tower of London, and gosh, I cannot remember for the life of me what they're called now. It's shadow something, but they basically go around and hunt the fantasy races who remain in this world, and I think kill them for not being in their world. I'm not 100% sure, but basically they exact justice and either return them to their fantasy worlds, or I don't know, punish them if they've broken the rules. I'm not sure. Not 100% sure what they do. But anyway, she gets picked up by these guys, and they say, well, now you're going to come to like our academy and learn to be one of us. And there's a big group of them, but only one of them can be selected. The rest will either be returned to their home worlds or executed. And she is on the execute list. They get assigned like buddies, trainers, who they are to work with, sleep in the same room with, eat with, do everything together with. And hers is one of the guys who tracked her down, and he has taken a vow of silence, and he will not speak unless he kills everyone on his hit list. She has like her own sort of mission, and he has his mission, and those missions do not coincide, but yet they are undeniably attracted to one another. He's also half fae and half, I'll let you discover if you read this book, but I thought it was really, really good. I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars, and I'm definitely going to continue this series also. So I definitely recommend you check it out if you're into fantasy romance. It's just like a super easy read. Most of these books I've read and enjoyed this month have been like reads that are very digestible, and you don't have to think too hard about them, and you can actually just have a good time, but they've still got like so many elements to them. Yeah, this was one of those books, and it surprised me. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did, but I thought it was fantastic. Then when I came back to the UK, I downloaded the rest of the Mindfuck series on Kindle Unlimited and started working my way through those. So the second book is called Sidetracked. Again, I gave this 4 stars. It just continues our story of our serial killer chick who is in a relationship with an FBI agent who is working on her case. I mean, come on, what a story. 4 stars. Then I took a little deviation because this was staring at me on my shelves, and you know, manga doesn't take me too long to get through. So this is A Sign of Affection Omnibus with volumes 4, 5 and 6 of A Sign of Affection in it. You might have seen me talk about the first omnibus before. This is about Yuki, who is deaf, and Itsuo met, and they have like a chance meeting in the first part and start dating, and this is the continuation of their early relationship. It is just so funny and sweet and just brilliant. It is like everything I love in an easygoing romantic manga, so I absolutely recommend checking this out. I haven't watched the anime yet, but I really want to. But far out, the manga is just so cute. I just am so unequivocally happy when I read this, so I totally recommend it. 5 stars. I also like that both the covers of my manga I read this month were yellow. Then I got back into the Mindfuck series and I read book 3, which is called Scarlet Angel. Again, 4 stars. Story continued progressing. These are each about 200 pages or a bit under, so they're like super easy to just tear through. Very fun, very good. 4 stars. Then drum roll. I know what you're all wondering. Leah, did you finish Magician by Raymond E. Feist? I did! Yes! Today is the 1st of September. I finished it yesterday on the 31st of August at like 9:15 p.m. So I finished it. I finished it in the month of August like I really wanted to. Was it a struggle? Absolutely. I tried to read it, but as I was reading it on my flight back from Morocco, it literally put me to sleep. And if a book does that to me, that's very not good, because I'm not a napper. And if your book makes me sleep on a plane during the daytime, that is very not good. So I picked it back up on audiobook, and thankfully that made it a lot easier for me to digest. I was going to give this book a 2.5, which is extremely controversial, I know. But the ending, I think, really saved it. And when I compare how I felt with the beginning and how I felt with the end, I really liked these 2 parts. So I think I can give it a 3-star on its merits. But this book was really not for me. It was written in the 70s, late 70s if I'm not wrong. Definitely a product of its time. There is like one moment for sure of just overtly casual racism that I was just not cool with. Okay, let me start from the beginning. My first gripe with this book was that it starts out as one thing, and I thought it was going to be about like Pug and Thomas and Roland growing up, and like we follow Pug as he learns to become like a magician within the castle in Critty. That's what I thought it was going to be about. And then it took a sharp left turn, and I was like, oh, okay. So that was the first thing that put me off. A rift opens, and an empire from another planet arrive, and they go to war, and they go to war for a very long time. Okay, so the book is so long because the war is so long. My problem is not with the war being, what, 9 years long? My problem is with the execution. I understand this was based off a D&D game they were playing at the time, and fuck me, it reads like that. Once you have that context, it really makes a lot of sense. My problem with Raymond Feist was that when he wrote this book, no one had ever explained to him before the concept of show don't tell, because you are just told everything. There is, like, with the exception of the arena, which is in the last part of the book, which I liked, you are almost never involved in any of the conflicts. Oh, and there was like the siege on Critty, but that was also not done extremely well in my opinion. This book is just jumping around on different point of views, and you go to a new point of view and you haven't seen those people in a really long time, so they sit around and they have a conversation where they tell you everything that has happened since you last saw them in conversation style. Kind of like in Lord of the Rings, when a lot of the Lord of the Rings is like people sitting around talking and telling each other things, except the Lord of the Rings balances it really well by having really cool fight scenes in between, and in the Lord of the Rings the characters are really interesting. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Magician did not have the compelling characters and a balance enough to allow the over-explaining of everything to be enjoyable. Also, the main character that you care about is Pug. He's like the magician, right? You could go 10 chapters without seeing Pug, to the point where you're sitting there like, what the fuck? So basically the whole book is you spend some time with this character and you're like, oh, I forgot they existed because it's been so long. I wonder what they've been up to. And then they just tell you in a conversation everything that's happened, even major character deaths, which you think you would want to see, which would be interesting to see. One character in particular died, and his death actually sounded like quite heroic and like funny in a way and very endearing, but we don't get to see it, we just get told about it in a conversation. Then the element of casual racism that really put me off. So basically, the Midkemians capture one of the Sirani, who are the people from another world who have invaded them for metal. And the Sirani are clearly just an allegory for Imperial Japan. It's quite obvious. So they capture this character, and he has a Sirani name, a very Asian sounding name. And they were like, you can stay here and like work with us as an equal, the Midkemians, but that name's a bit hard, so we're just gonna call you Charles. I have a major problem with people not being willing to learn the people's ethnic names and giving them a fucking white name like Charles, but anyway. That was just one moment that really rubbed me the wrong way. But continuing on, my other major problem in terms of characters is the women. I've literally never read a fantasy book with weaker, more pathetic, useless female characters before. Actually, like, this is one of the books where for a long time I had hesitation to read books written by men because I thought the women would be written in this way. And I've had excellent luck with that not being the case with the fantasy books I've picked up this year so far, until Magician. Carline doesn't do anything but sit around and talk. Even, gosh, see, I can't even remember her name. The Queen of the Elves. Yeah, she's not like a Galadriel type, absolutely not. She is so pathetic and useless and is basically just a girl for Thomas to bang. Even when Thomas is being a dick, she's like, I just can't resist him. He's treating me terribly and he doesn't care about my needs, and he's probably possessed by a race of people who tried to enslave the elves, but oh god. I can't stay away. Girl, grow a fucking backbone. And then yeah, Pug's wife, also a useless character. I don't know, they're just all the women in this. There aren't many of them, and they're all completely useless. They don't contribute anything other than to be there for the boys to kiss, basically, and have sex with. But it's also YA, like, you don't get any other spicy, there's no spicy action or anything in here, it's definitely YA. But yeah, the women serve no purpose other than to be there for the men to enjoy. Some of the characters were really cool. I really liked Martin Longbow. I really liked Amos. I did really like Pug. I liked Macross the Black. And yeah, I did think everything from like when Pug comes back to Midkemia onwards to be really interesting. I really liked the last 2 or 3 chapters in particular, so that saved it. So that's my big rant for now about why Magician was a 3-star for me. For a moment I thought I'm never going to read anything by Raymond E. Feist again, but I have heard really excellent things about Daughter of the Empire, so I might consider picking that up in the future, just because I've heard really, really good things. And it's written with Janny Wurst, I think, which everyone has very good things to say about Janny Worst, so I will consider eventually picking that one up as well. But yeah, Magician was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like this epic fantasy great, and I was just going to be like, wow, this is amazing. I've had so many people recommend it to me, and it was just not for me, unfortunately. It's very boy fantasy, I would say. Finally, last night, 1 hour before midnight, I finished All the Lies by S.C. Abbey, which is the 4th book in the Mindfuck series. I ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars, actually. I just really, really liked the way that one ended. Mindfuck series is like actually sort of blowing my mind. I'm super excited to finish the last one. I should hopefully finish it today, but we'll talk all about that in my vlogs for September and talk all about it in my September recap. So it's a bit interesting because my August recap is actually coming out before any of my vlogs from August. It's just the way the scheduling of vlogs has gone. I'm not quite sure how that happened. They used to come out like the Sunday of the week that I just filmed, but now I'm 4 weeks ahead. So that's kind of crazy. But I hope you guys will watch my vlogs that will come out from next week that include my August reads. And I go on a lot of really cool trips overseas in the month of August, so please stick around and watch those videos. 75% of my viewers are not subscribed to my channel, so please do consider hitting that subscribe button if you would like to see more. Make sure you like this video and leave a comment letting me know if you read any of these books, if you agree or disagree with my assessments of some of the books I've read, and leave a comment letting me know any recommendations you have for me, because I'm always willing to read the things you guys recommend. This was surprisingly a bit of a long one, but thank you so much for sitting here and listening to my rambles about the 16 books I read in the month of August. I really appreciate your time. Bye.